Welcome to the Board Edit. We want to help you to lead more boldly, serve wisely, and impact deeply.
Our goal is to equip 1 million community-minded leaders to serve with confidence. I'm your host, Craig.
And I'm your host, Dawn. Let's dive in.
So let's talk about something perceived maybe a little more boring than some of our other episodes, but probably one of the most important topics, and that is bylaws and policies. Because everyone's an expert showing up to a board meeting knowing all the bylaws and policies, right?
Yeah, I know. And yeah, it's so interesting because I think, and I have found myself in the exception, that I need that structure.
Right.
And because I think I know my brain enough to know that I invent, right? Yeah. And now the working genius, tool that we can offer people, but I invent. So I know that I always have to go back to where are my guardrails?
Right. Yep.
Because to do a set of bylaws is not easy.
No.
And to be able to have it as a structure. And I think what a lot of people don't recognize is that that's really, and especially in terms of crisis, and that crisis can look like you have a board chair who passes, or a CEO that passes.
Any succession thing, yeah.
Yeah, the bylaws actually are very critical.
Framework.
It's the same way if you own a company and something happens to the company, you go back to the organizing documents to find out, what happens now. Right. It's the same thing. Yep. It's not meant to prevent anything at all. It's actually to be able to provide
that structure
within a legal structure and a legal framework, because a nonprofit it's a legal entity. And it's interesting people's expectations around it. And it's kind of confusing sometimes, actually.
Yeah, it is. And I think when you are recruiting a new board member, that is probably not a part of the conversation that comes up is what the bylaws or what the policies are. But that doesn't give an out for understanding, one, that they're there, two, a level of familiarity with it, and three, understanding that really is how that organization conducts its business. So even though, we've said before with the book, The Confident Board Member, that we've written, being very behaviors and values based, it's not to not say the bylaws or policies aren't important. Like, that comes next. And then that's what we're talking about today. And just why people need to be able to orient themselves around how those bylaws are laid out.
Yeah. And honestly, as you were talking, I heard a story like in the last couple of years. I went to a meeting with a very established foundation that was established out of a philanthropic gift in like 1900 something. I mean, a very, very established foundation that is still very robust and still growing over 100 years later. And they read their organizing documents out loud.
Oh.
Every year.
Wow. That would be an exception to the norm of practices.
Yeah, I'm not exactly championing that for bylaws. However, there is something to that.
Sure.
Because we can all think, right? We can all invent what we thought, or it's like, it functions this way or that way. It's like, well, what do the bylaws say?
Right.
What do the policies say? Because the reality is, in an audit, or depending on what your funding is or whatever, it always goes back to what you said you were going to do, and then how do you do it? Like, that's the way you're audited. It's not just about financial numbers. It's also about what guides those financial numbers and how those finances are stewarded.
Yeah. And it's not just about precedent either, or, we've always done it this way. If that is in conflict with your organizing documents, that can really get a board in trouble, especially from an audit perspective, or if federal grants are involved and you're receiving annual monitoring. I mean, they will get up in your business like a surgical procedure to make sure that you have those necessary documents, and realizing that you've been operating from an assumption and not what actually is written down, is a big red flag.
Yeah, and I also think, one of the things that we've heard a lot in our time is, don't just rubber stamp it,
Right.
right? We don't want to be a board that rubber stamps. We don't want to be a staff member whose board rubber stamps. And one of the ways that you prevent that is knowing when certain things need to happen, how board members come on the board, how board members leave the board. There's always kind of the hiccup with governance when you've got a member who came on a board, and it could be a very normal, something happened in their life, but they didn't resign.
Mhm.
And then it's like, well, they haven't been here since they came on the board.
Right.
That's a very
Yeah.
simple example of things, but
Has happened.
it has
Yes.
happened, and that is why bylaws matter.
Yeah.
And what is interesting is, when you know that it matters and you know how it matters, you're not always the most popular person in the room.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a glamorous role either,
Yeah.
but doesn't excuse or doesn't provide a release or an out from knowing it. So, who do you think is responsible for ensuring the bylaws are being followed? Or what kind of processes have you seen in ensuring that compliance piece?
Yeah, I believe that it's the CEO's role.
Yeah.
And maybe that's, a podcast into itself, but I believe that part of being charged with the leadership of an organization, if you're a CEO, you're the CEO, you're the president, you're the executive director, typically in bylaws.
Mhm.
And it is something that you do need to understand if you're on the staff side of this. What does the bylaws give you authority to do?
Correct.
And I believe that it's the staff, because the staff is the one paid for the organization, and you're the paid leader of the
Mhm.
organization to know that,
Yeah.
and to help your board understand and to develop. Again, I go back to the board decision matrix,
Mhm.
right? So that they know, hey, that's my role. I'm informing you,
Right.
if you're on the CEO side of it. For the board to also be able to ask, like, hey, is that a board information? It's like, what does the bylaw say? Like, especially when you're talking about loans,
Mhm.
or being able to obligate the organization for
Right.
something. How do we receive things?
Mhm.
Those bylaws are necessary, but it's up to the CEO, because no one is going to have the expansive knowledge of the operations of the board and the operations of the staff more than the CEO.
Yeah.
Like that's our dance,
Yep.
right? And when we're in that CEO role. And it can be challenging, and I think that's why being able to use the book.
Mhm.
I'm looking at the book because it's on the table, but it's being able to use the book in what we need from board members as a CEO, but then also as a board member to be able to help support that CEO, which
Right.
is in the organization, to say, hey, are we in compliance with what we said we were going to do? And if we're not, it's time to revise the bylaws.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right. And not just because this is always how we've done it, but to be intentional to take that step to then formalize that precedent into a true procedure.
Yeah, and again, it's a business conversation, and as you say, a nonprofit is mission driven, and it is financially driven. So I mean, you've got to keep both things in all times
Right.
relevant. And in fact, the IRS says you have to stay in keeping with your mission, right? You
Right.
can't have mission drift, and we'll do another episode on that. But you have to do what you said you were going to do. You also have to stay nonprofit, not for profit.
Right.
But the bylaws is what tells the IRS what you're doing.
Yeah, that's the ultimate map, the ultimate roadmap that is driving the direction of how that organization operates.
Yeah.
And and it's as simple as it could be in a dusty binder on a bookshelf somewhere. Most are on the Secretary of State's website as part of the organizing documents, but for every organization that has a policy like records retention, where every 7 years you're reviewing records to trash, I mean, create a policy where every X number of you, like, you're reviewing those. Like, there has to be intentionality to making sure that they're checking them. And by extension, the same with policy manuals. I mean, it is really easy for policies to no longer fit the procedure. But the auditor is going to go back to that manual and they're going to make sure that the procedure fits the policy. And those are, especially is where the expertise of the staff come in, where board members might posture that they should be experts in those policies, and that's not necessarily accurate. They should ask about them, and they should prompt staff to give feedback on them. More often than not, it's the staff that's operationalizing them. But it's part of that conversation of just knowing what is the roadmap and then what routes are we taking to get to the destination.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you're like, okay, well, when's a good time to review them? Anytime you have a question about when's a good time to review
Right,
them.
exactly. Right.
But that is why, and again, it's just standard. There is a standard format of bylaws.
Sure.
It's standard. It's part of Robert's rules. I mean, it's standard. If you don't know what Robert's rules of order are, it doesn't mean that, you have to even say, like, what is your method in your bylaws of determining votes, conducting business. And usually bylaws will say generally, because Robert's rules is not easy to follow.
Yeah.
It is very complicated, but what it does is it gives us a guide, and you should have an annual meeting time in your bylaws.
Yep.
And that is to, again, keep it healthy, being able to discern leadership for the next year. And I just want to go back really quickly to what you said about auditors and monitors, is that you're being audited and monitored usually for the year that has already happened. And that could be 6 months, 9 months after that year ended. So if you don't have a good record of how things are documented in board minutes and those types of things that tie back to the bylaws, it can be it can just be a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And again, it's not a really fun conversation to have in a meeting.
Yeah. Because the business is busy, right? I mean, just the day-to-day can sometimes feel more important, or, you're serving that meal, you're providing that, like, that is important, but it doesn't mean that these aren't essential. And you have to find that balance. And that's where, having a really empowered staff comes in to make sure that they are balancing those things. And whether you have an annual board calendar where certain meetings are dedicated to certain procedural check-ins or approvals of things, having some formality to it is definitely a recommendation.
Yeah, now both of us started in terms of, like, where the bylaws are kept. Like, and these are serious documents. Like, you have to have them.
Right.
There's some corporate documents that must be in place. And we have both been in the business long enough that, I've even seen them in safes, right? So that if there's a fire, you've got your organizing, your corporate documents. They're that level, just like in your home, you've got certain documents you want in a safe. In a business, same thing. And we're also in a different era now with online. So where have you found the best place to kind of house these documents in a secure place, but so that board members always have access?
Yeah, accessibility is the biggest thing there, right? For us, we use a board portal called Onboard, and there is a resource directory where all of our core operating documents are. Everyone has access to it. They are PDF versions, so people can't just go in and make changes. But then we have the formal records of the organization with meeting minutes and agendas to know when the bylaws were updated. And then on the cover of every document, it says when they were last revised, because that's where I've seen, the board will make decisions and changing policies, but then they won't do the step of actually revising the document. So you're a year deep and it's like, oh, I thought we had this conversation. Didn't we decide to do something differently? And it's like, well, it wasn't recorded in the bylaws, so that doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And a lot of my nonprofit experience as a staff is in very heavily audited, monitored. So as you're talking, I'm like, yep. We actually, on the staff side of things, the nonprofit I've led, we actually have everything in a board portal. For more recent nonprofit that I've helped to found, we have them in a secure file, but it is a global NGO. So all of the board members have to have access. So it's, depending on your structure, you really do have to address that these days, because you can't wait for the mail to get to another part of the world always to be able, so that everybody has that document. And when some of our listeners may be in that same thing where you're dealing with different cultures and different lifestyles in service to others. And so really thinking about that as a nonprofit is important. But I have to, we have to have the file cabinet in the sky.
Yep.
And not everybody likes that, but it is important that everyone have a password to it. Everyone knows where it is. It's a part, because now it's not just the binder on the shelf that you dust off and that you can pull out of a safe to go, oh, here's how we were founded.
Or the board member binder that inevitably gets lost a couple months into their term. And it's like, oh, I don't remember having that. And you've been making them for decades.
Did you give us a board?
I did, yeah. Case in point.
I do remember. But anyway, so I think what we want to leave our listeners with is that, good governance is always grounded in clarity.
Yep. And the salient question is, when was the last time you looked at your bylaws? Right?
That's right. Yeah. So I think that kind of wraps this up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we appreciate you listening, and we hope to see you next time on the Confident Board Member Podcast.
Thanks for joining us. Ready to sharpen your board skills? Explore our practical online courses at theconfidentcompanyus.com, designed to give you tools that you can use in your very next meeting.